Dharma, a middle-aged man with graying hair at his temples, sat on the porch of his wooden house. His gaze was fixed far off on the village road he had recently built. The road now stood strong and smooth, stretching like a black ribbon connecting his village to the outside world. Yet behind his satisfied smile lay memories of the past that had never truly faded. His childhood in a remote village at the foot of Mount Semeru, Malang, was filled with struggles and bitter recollections that lingered in his heart. Dharma was born into a modest family in the village of Siddhamulyo. The village was small, surrounded by lush green rice fields, but isolated by its poor road conditions. The village's main road was little more than a mud pit, especially during the rainy season. Wagon wheels often sank halfway into the mud, while farmers carrying their harvest had to walk barefoot, heavy burdens on their shoulders. For young Dharma, that muddy road was an unquestioned part of daily life. "Dharma, don't forget to take this small knife," his mother said one morning, handing him a dull kitchen knife. "If you come across thorns or roots blocking the path, just cut them. Be careful on the way." Dharma nodded obediently. He was only 8 years old at the time but was already used to helping his mother carry produce to the small market in a neighboring village. The 5-kilometer journey felt like a grand adventure to him but was also fraught with challenges. He recalled how slippery the dirt road became when it rained. Sometimes he had to take off his sandals and walk barefoot to avoid slipping. Despite living amidst such hardships, young Dharma was a cheerful child. He often played in the river with his friends, catching small fish with homemade fishing rods or running through the rice fields chasing dragonflies. But one event changed the way he viewed his village and its broken road, a tragedy that left a deep scar in his heart. At that time, his mother, Busalastri, fell gravely ill. Her body burned with fever, her face pale, and her breathing labored. Dharma's father, Wardo, panicked as her condition worsened. They knew their only hope was to take her to the clinic in the district town. But getting there was no easy task. "What should we do? The road is so muddy." "We need to hurry," said a neighbor who had come to help. Wardo could only nod as he looked at his wife lying weakly. He decided to borrow a neighbor's ox cart, the only means of transport that could handle the treacherous road. With great effort, they lifted Busalastri's frail body onto the cart, which was lined with bamboo mats. Dharma sat beside her, holding her cold hand tightly. The journey felt like a nightmare. The cart's wheels frequently got stuck in the mud, forcing them to stop and push it repeatedly. Drizzling rain began to fall, making the journey even more difficult. Dharma could only cry softly, calling out to his mother, hoping she would open her eyes and smile at him like she always did. But the miracle never came. By the time they reached the clinic, the doctor could only shake his head. "I'm sorry, we're too late. Your mother has passed away," the doctor said gently. Dharma's small world crumbled in that moment. He couldn't accept the reality that his mother was gone, that they had failed to save her simply because of the village's impassable road. His cries echoed through the quiet, small clinic. His father held him tightly, trying to console him, but Dharma knew their lives would never be the same. After his mother's passing, life in Siddhamulyo became even harder for Dharma and his father. Wardo tried to be both a father and a mother to Dharma, but losing his wife left a deep wound that was hard to heal. Meanwhile, Dharma grew up with an unyielding determination. He promised himself that one day he would change his village's fate. He didn't want anyone else to experience the same loss he had suffered because of a muddy road. That bitter memory lingered with him every step of the way. Every time he saw other children playing on the same road, he was reminded of how difficult life was in a village cut off from the world. Young Dharma didn't know how, but he believed that one day he would find a way to fix the village road. That promise became the fuel that drove him to dream and work hard. Dharma's childhood wasn't just filled with sorrow. He also learned many valuable lessons from life in his village. He learned about hard work from his father, who never gave up. He learned about the importance of mutual cooperation from the villagers who always helped one another. And most importantly, he learned that hope must always be kept alive, no matter how difficult the circumstances. Years later, as he sat on his porch, reminiscing about those days, Dharma smiled. The road now stretching in front of his house was the fulfillment of a promise he had made to himself. A promise made by a little boy who had lost his mother in a remote village but found strength in that loss to change the fate of many others. Dharma gazed at his quiet village on that serene morning. Birds chirped in the trees, and dew still clung to the leaves. Yet, deep in his heart, there was a longing for something greater, something that could transform his life and the lives of the people in his village. After enduring a childhood full of struggles, he felt that staying in the village alone wouldn't be enough to realize his dreams. With resolute determination, Dharma decided to leave Siddhamulyo village and venture to Surabaya. The decision wasn't an easy one. He knew that life in a big city would be fraught with challenges, especially for someone from a remote village like him. His father, Wardo, was initially strongly opposed to the idea. "Son, are you sure you can survive in the city? Everything there is expensive and no one will help you," Wardo said with evident concern. But Dharma managed to convince his father that this was a step he had to take. "Father, I want to try. If I stay here, I'll never know what I'm capable of. I promise to work hard and send money back to you," he said with conviction. With a small amount of money from selling some of their chickens, Dharma began his long journey to Surabaya. He boarded an old bus that rattled with every pothole it hit. The journey took nearly 8 hours. Throughout the trip, his mind was filled with various images of life in the city. He imagined tall buildings, bright lights, and crowds unlike anything he'd ever seen before. Yet he also felt nervous. What if he failed? What if he couldn't make it? When he finally arrived in Surabaya, Dharma quickly realized that the city was far larger and busier than he had ever imagined. The streets were packed with vehicles, horns blared incessantly, and people moved quickly as if they were racing against time. It all made Dharma feel small and out of place. But he didn't let those feelings overwhelm him. He knew he had to find work quickly to survive. The first few days in Surabaya were spent searching for jobs. He walked from one place to another, asking anyone who would listen. However, without a formal education or work experience, he could only find menial jobs. He worked as a porter in a market, helping to carry goods from one spot to another. The job was tough, but he poured his heart into it. Every time he received his wages, no matter how small, he felt proud because it was the result of his own hard work. "Hey, help me load this onto the truck," a fruit vendor shouted one morning. Dharma quickly ran over and lifted crates of oranges into the truck. Sweat poured down his body, but he didn't complain. He knew that every drop of sweat was a step toward a better future. In addition to working at the market, Dharma tried other jobs. He worked as a parking attendant, washed cars, and even swept streets in a residential complex. He never turned down any job, as long as it provided him with an income. Yet, life in the big city remained difficult. The cost of food, rent for a tiny room in a narrow alley, and daily necessities often consumed nearly all of his earnings. Some days he could only afford to eat once to save money. Despite all this, Dharma never gave up. He always remembered why he had come to Surabaya. He wanted to change his life and help his father back in the village. Whenever he felt tired or discouraged, he recalled the promise he had made to himself and to his late mother, the promise that he would do whatever it took to create a better life. One day, while searching for additional work around the market, Dharma met a street vendor named Tarmo who sold meatball soup, Bakso. The elderly man was warm and friendly, with a simple cart that was always surrounded by customers. "Son, would you like to buy some Bakso?" Tarmo asked with a kind smile. Dharma shook his head with an apologetic smile. "Sorry, sir, I don't have any money, but if you need help, I can push your cart." Tarmo chuckled lightly. "You're a funny one. All right, help me push this cart to the next alley, and you can eat as much Bakso as you want, for free." Dharma hadn't expected such an offer. He immediately helped Tarmo push the cart, and from that day on, their bond began to grow. Tarmo saw potential in Dharma. He saw a hardworking, honest, and determined young man, despite the hardships he faced. Eventually, Tarmo offered Dharma a job as his assistant in selling Bakso. "Dharma, if you're interested, you can learn how to make Bakso from me. Who knows? One day you might have your own business," Tarmo said one afternoon. Dharma eagerly accepted the offer. He started learning from scratch how to select quality meat, grind it, mix the ingredients, and make flavorful broth. Tarmo taught him patiently, like a mentor guiding his student. Dharma deeply valued the knowledge he gained, knowing it was a precious asset for his future. Working with Tarmo not only gave Dharma an income but also reignited his sense of hope. He felt that his life was starting to take shape. He was no longer just working to survive but also learning skills that could elevate his circumstances. Every time he saw a customer smile in satisfaction after eating the Bakso, Dharma felt a sense of pride. He began to dream of one day owning a successful Bakso business of his own. Of course, the road to success wasn't easy. Dharma faced numerous challenges, from fierce competition with other vendors to limited capital. Nevertheless, he continued to work hard and save diligently. He set aside a small portion of his earnings to save, all while continuing to learn and improve his skills. Tarmo, who had come to regard Dharma as his own son, often shared words of wisdom. Dharma, in life, honesty and hard work are the most important things. If you're honest, people will trust you. If you work hard, God will open the way for you, he said one day. Those words stayed with Dharma. He knew that his life wouldn't change overnight, but he believed that with effort and prayer, he could achieve his dreams. Years later, when Dharma finally opened his own Bakso business, he always remembered Tarmo as the person who gave him a chance and renewed his hope at a time when he was close to despair. His experience working with Tarmo became the foundation of his success and a reminder that behind every achievement, there are people who serve as pillars of support. This chapter marks the beginning of Dharma's long journey toward success. A journey that began with small steps on the bustling streets of Surabaya, but was fueled by unwavering determination and dreams that never dimmed. That morning, Dharma woke up earlier than usual. He stood in front of his cart, now adorned with a simple sign that read, Bakso Dharma. To others, it might look like an ordinary sign, but to Dharma, it was the symbol of a long and arduous journey that was finally beginning to bear fruit. That humble cart was not just a means of earning a living but a testament to his perseverance through life's challenges. The early days of his meatball business were riddled with obstacles. After years of working with Tarmo, Dharma finally mustered the courage to start his own venture. With the savings he painstakingly collected, he bought a second-hand cart and basic equipment. Tarmo, his mentor, was fully supportive. Dharma, if you're diligent and honest, this business will succeed. Remember, customers are like family. Treat them with respect, Tarmo advised. Dharma began his business on a small roadside corner in Surabaya. The first few days were tough. He had to wake up at dawn to prepare the ingredients, grind the meat, and make the broth, all by himself. When he started selling, only 1 or 2 customers would show up. Yet Dharma never gave up. He kept improving his meatball recipe, listening to customer feedback, and learning how to provide the best service. Over time, his business began to thrive. His distinctive meatball flavor, paired with a savory, herb-rich broth, started to attract more people. The handful of customers grew into a steady stream. Word of mouth spread, and soon the name Bakso Dharma became familiar in the area. He even gained loyal customers who came daily. One day, a customer remarked, "Dharma, your meatballs are so delicious. If you had a proper shop, even more people would come." Those words stayed with Dharma, sparking a new dream, opening his own meatball restaurant. But he knew that would require significant capital. For now, he resolved to save and work harder. He extended his operating hours, selling late into the night, and scouted for better locations around the city to expand his reach. 5 years after first opening his cart, that dream finally became a reality. With his savings and a small loan from a cooperative, Dharma managed to rent a modest spot on a busy main road. The restaurant was simple, with wooden tables and chairs, but Dharma was proud. He knew it was a big step toward a brighter future. The restaurant quickly became popular. Customers came from various parts of the city and even from outside Surabaya. The name, Bakso Dharma, gained even more recognition, and the business flourished. Dharma began hiring employees, something he had never imagined before. He also started learning more about managing a business, including handling finances and improving product quality. The success of his first restaurant paved the way for Dharma to expand his business further. He opened new branches in different areas of Surabaya and later in nearby cities. Every branch maintained the same high quality and unique taste, a principle Dharma refused to compromise. He believed that customer trust was the cornerstone of his business. During this journey, Dharma met a young entrepreneur named Andy, who had extensive experience in franchising. Seeing the immense potential in Dharma's business, Andy proposed a partnership. Together, they developed a franchise system for Bakso Dharma, creating standard operating procedures, training franchise partners, and ensuring consistent quality across all branches. The franchise quickly became a massive success. Within 5 years, they opened dozens of branches throughout East Java. Each branch not only provided Dharma with income but also created job opportunities for many people. Dharma felt immense pride in being able to help others, just as Tarmo had once helped him. Despite his newfound success and stable life, Dharma often longed for his village. He remembered the muddy roads he used to walk on, the sound of birds in the morning, and the vast green rice fields. He also thought of his father, who was growing older and living alone in the village. Whenever he returned to Sidamulio village, he felt a pang of sadness seeing how little had changed. The main road was still muddy, just as it had been when he was a child. Villagers still faced the same struggles, especially during the rainy season. Dharma felt a deep urge to make a difference. One day, while sitting on the porch of his father's house, Dharma said, "I want to build a proper road for this village. I want everyone to live more easily, not like in the old days." Warto smiled, his eyes glistening with emotion. "Dharma, that's a noble dream. Your mother would be so proud of you now." Dharma's desire to build the village road was not a sudden idea. It was a dream he had harbored since childhood, ever since losing his mother due to the muddy road that delayed their journey to the health clinic. Now, with the success he had achieved, he felt it was his responsibility to change the fate of his village. Dharma began planning the road project. He consulted with village leaders, gathered input from the residents, and sought advice from contractors about the costs and construction process. When the planning was complete, Dharma used most of his savings to fund the project. He didn't want to rely on government or external assistance. To him, this was a personal responsibility he wanted to fulfill. As construction began, the entire village came together in excitement. Villagers worked alongside the laborers, offering help and support. Children who once played in the mud now ran happily on the newly paved sections of the road. For Dharma, this sight was an unparalleled joy. The project was completed in 3 months. The once muddy village road was now a smooth asphalt path, connecting Sidamulio village to the nearby town. The villagers' lives improved dramatically. Farmers could transport their harvests to market more easily, children could go to school without getting dirty, and vehicles could finally enter the village without difficulty. Seeing the transformation, Dharma knew all his struggles had been worth it. He had proven that with hard work and good intentions, it was possible to change lives, not just his own, but those of many others. Though he was now known as a successful entrepreneur, to the people of Sidamulio, Dharma remained the same village boy who never forgot his roots. The blue sky stretched above Sidamulio village that morning. The breeze carried a fresh scent from the vast rice fields surrounding the village. Dharma stepped out of his car and stood for a moment at the village gate, taking in the view he hadn't seen in so long. He had spent decades in the city, chasing dreams and success. Now, his feet once again touched the soil of his birthplace. But something made his smile fade. The village's main road remained exactly as he'd left it long ago, full of potholes, muddy, and difficult to traverse. Dharma took a deep breath. That road held many bitter memories of his life. He recalled how challenging it had been for villagers to transport their harvests to the market. He remembered his mother, who couldn't be taken to the clinic in time because an ambulance got stuck in the mud. Even though his life had changed, seeing his village in the same state left a pang of sadness in his heart. "Dharma, it's been so long since you last came home." An elderly man's voice broke his reverie. Dharma turned to see Karto, an old farmer who had been a close friend of his father's. "Yes, Karto. It feels like just yesterday I left this village," Dharma replied with a faint smile, walking over to warmly shake Karto's hand. Karto looked at him with eyes full of emotion. "You've made it big in the city now, haven't you? But this village remains the same. The roads are still damaged, harvests are hard to transport, and children struggle to get to school. Sometimes we feel forgotten." Karto's words pierced Dharma's heart. He felt guilty for being away for so long without doing anything for the village. But he knew it was time to return and make a difference. After a brief chat with Karto, Dharma continued his journey to his childhood home. The house was old but still stood sturdy, surrounded by a small yard now overgrown with wild grass. Sitting on a wooden bench in front of the house was his father, Warto, chewing beetle leaves. "Dharma, my son has come home," Warto called out joyfully. Dharma immediately approached and embraced his father tightly. They talked at length about everything, from Dharma's life in the city to the unchanged state of the village. "Father, why is the village road still in such bad shape? Didn't the government provide aid?" Dharma asked. Warto shook his head slowly. "There's aid, but it often doesn't reach here. The villagers also don't have enough money to fix the road themselves. And so, things stay the same, my son." Hearing this, Dharma felt even more compelled to act. But before deciding what steps to take, he wanted to hear directly from the villagers. The next day, Dharma visited some of his old friends in the village. One of them was Sarman, his childhood friend who had become a farmer. They sat under a shady tree by the rice fields, reminiscing about the past and discussing the current state of the village. Dharma, do you remember when we were kids? We used to play on that muddy road, even though it was a mess. But now, that road has become a huge problem for us, Sarman said, pointing toward the village's main road. Dharma nodded. Yes, I remember, but hasn't there been a government project to fix it? Sarman gave a bitter smile. The project exists only on paper. Who knows where the funds went? We can only accept it as it is. During harvest season, getting our crops to the market is a struggle for survival. Many crops spoil on the way before they even reach the buyers. Sarman's complaints weren't the only ones. When Dharma met with other villagers, he heard similar stories. Mothers lamented how hard it was to take their children to the clinic when they were sick. Children had to walk long distances through muddy roads just to get to school. These conditions discouraged many from continuing their education. Dharma, if only this road were repaired, our lives would be so much easier, said a mother carrying her child. But we don't know where else to turn for help. Dharma's heart grew heavier with every story he heard. He knew something needed to be done, and he felt a deep responsibility to help. Amid his restlessness, Dharma visited a small hill at the edge of the village that had been his favorite spot as a child. From the top of the hill, he could see the entire village. The lush green rice fields, the neat rows of houses, and the main road cutting through the village. The view brought back childhood memories while also giving him a fresh perspective on what needed to be done. He sat under a large tree, gazing intently at the village. I have to do something, he murmured to himself. If not me, who else will care for this village? Memories of his mother resurfaced in his mind. He remembered how hard she had worked for their family, despite their limited means. He also recalled her final moments when the muddy road had prevented them from getting her the medical help she needed. That experience had left a deep scar on his heart, and now he felt it was time to change everything. Dharma returned home with firm resolve. He gathered several village leaders, including the village head, farmers, and local youths, to discuss what could be done. During the meeting, Dharma proposed the idea of repairing the village road using his personal funds. I know this isn't my duty, but as someone from this village, I feel responsible. I want to build a proper road for all of us, Dharma said with conviction. The villagers were shocked by his proposal. They hadn't expected Dharma, who had found success in the city, to still care so deeply about his village. Many were moved, and some even offered their labor to support the project. The village head, Raziat, said, Dharma, this has been our dream for so long. If you're truly willing to help, we'll fully support you. Dharma smiled. We'll do this together. This road isn't just for me. It's for all of us. That meeting marked the beginning of a major effort to transform Sidamulio village. While Dharma knew the journey ahead wouldn't be easy, he was confident that together, they could achieve the dream they had long awaited. With renewed determination, he began planning the steps to make the village road improvement project a reality. Dharma sat pensively in the living room of his childhood home, staring at the wooden walls that held so many memories. The crowing of roosters and the rustling of leaves outside transported his thoughts back to his simple yet challenging childhood. For years, he had lived in the city, carrying a deep longing for this small village. Now that he had returned, he felt called to do something meaningful. As he walked along the village's muddy roads, vivid memories of his childhood came flooding back. He remembered how he and his friends used to navigate the slippery path to school, often slipping and falling. During the rainy season, the village roads turned into impassable mud pits. Most painful of all was the memory of his mother falling gravely ill. That night, his father struggled to take her to the clinic on an old bicycle through the treacherous road. But they were too late. That bitter memory lingered in Dharma's heart. He knew that if the village roads had been better, much suffering could have been avoided. Now, with the success he had achieved as a Bakso entrepreneur, he felt an obligation to help his village. One evening, while sitting with some of the village elders, Dharma listened to their complaints about the unchanging state of the village roads. Dharma, the roads have been like this since you left. Nothing has changed, lamented Manan, an elderly farmer. The villagers' crops were often damaged or arrived late at the market due to transportation difficulties. This situation hindered the village's economic growth. Hearing these complaints stirred something deep within Dharma. He thought to himself, why don't I take it upon myself to fix this road? I have enough money to start. This big idea began to take root in his mind. However, he knew that bringing this idea to life wouldn't be easy. It would require a substantial amount of money, manpower, and collaboration. Despite the challenges, his resolve was firm. Dharma began calculating his finances. Years of hard work had yielded significant savings, but repairing the village road would demand a hefty budget. He contemplated the risks. What if the project failed? What if the villagers misunderstood his intentions? Even his family in the city might disapprove of him spending such a large amount of money. Yet every time doubt crept in, memories of his childhood and the hopeful faces of the villagers reignited his determination. He realized that this was an opportunity to make a real difference. For him, the money he had earned would mean nothing if it was used solely for himself. With unwavering determination, he decided to move forward with his plan. Dharma chose to keep his plan a secret from most people, including his family in the city. He didn't want anyone to dissuade him or make him second-guess his decision. Only a few trusted individuals in the village, like Manan and Surip, were involved in the initial discussions. "Manan, I want to repair this road, but I'll need help finding people who can do the work," Dharma said during a conversation on Manan's porch. Manan was taken aback by the bold proposal. "Dharma, this is no small task, but if you're truly serious, I'm sure the villagers will support you. We just need to plan carefully." Dharma began conducting simple research. He reached out to some contacts in the city to gather information about the costs of road construction. He also sought recommendations for trustworthy contractors. Dharma wanted to ensure that the project would be done properly and without wasting resources. At the same time, he and Manan held small meetings with some villagers to discuss the project. However, they deliberately refrained from revealing that Dharma would be financing everything. "Let's think of this as a collective effort," Dharma told them. He didn't want the villagers to feel overly dependent on him. Even though the plan was still in its early stages, challenges began to arise. Some villagers were skeptical. "Can we really trust Dharma to help us with no ulterior motives? What's in it for him?" One villager whispered to another at the market. Hearing these rumors disappointed Dharma, but he remained patient. He believed that good intentions were always tested. Additionally, there were technical hurdles to overcome. The village road that needed repair was quite long and traversed difficult terrain. Some sections would need to be rebuilt entirely from scratch. Dharma knew this would be a massive undertaking, but his spirit remained undeterred. Dharma spent many nights pondering his plan. Whenever doubt resurfaced, he reminded himself of his goal: to help the village that had been such an integral part of his life. He believed that great change always began with small steps. With a resolute heart, he prepared to take the first step toward realizing his dream. Dharma returned to the village with a strong determination to fulfill his childhood dream: repairing the village's damaged main road. However, despite his pure and sincere intentions, he soon faced a series of challenges, both external and internal. Upon his arrival, Dharma immediately sensed a shift in the village atmosphere, a subtle but noticeable change from what he remembered. While much of the village's physical appearance remained the same, an air of awkwardness and distrust had begun to form among the villagers, especially towards someone who had left for the city years ago and now returned with an ambitious plan. News of Dharma's intention to fund the road repair out of his own pocket spread quickly. At the village coffee stall, where the men gathered every morning, whispers started circulating. Some speculated that Dharma had a hidden agenda. Maybe he's just looking to profit from this. Who knows? Once the road is built, he might open a new business here or even sell his land at a higher price, one villager said, likely driven by suspicion, but the word spread quickly across the community. Dharma, although aware of the rumors, remained focused on his goal. He understood that earning the villagers' trust would not be easy, especially after spending so many years away from the village, with most of them unaware of what he had been doing in the city. One of the biggest challenges Dharma faced was the villagers' distrust of his intentions. Some villagers were uneasy with the grand idea, which seemed too sudden and ambitious. They worried that the road repair project was not purely for the common good but might conceal personal benefits for Dharma. Among the skeptics was a prominent figure in the village, Abdurrahman, the head of the hamlet who had led the community for years. Although respected by the villagers, Abdurrahman openly voiced doubts about Dharma's project. "There must be something hidden behind this," said Abdurrahman during a village meeting, responding to Dharma's plan to build the road without involving the local government. "We need to be cautious. We can't let this turn into a project that benefits only one person while harming the rest of us." Abdurrahman's doubts were echoed by other skeptical villagers. They felt that even though Dharma had achieved success in the city, he was still part of a different world, one that might bring ulterior motives to their community. Some began to assume that Dharma wanted to exert political influence over the village or even seize villagers' land for a personal project unrelated to their welfare. Dharma couldn't entirely blame them, as he understood that suspicion is an inevitable part of life. However, he also realized that to change this perception, he would need to work even harder. Determined to clear the air, he decided to speak directly to the villagers. The road construction project finally began, and a new sense of hope emerged among the villagers. Dharma, who had long been planning this endeavor, now faced the real challenges of the field. Every step, every decision, and every obstacle that arose would determine the fate of this ambitious project. For the villagers, the road repair was not just an infrastructure project. For them, it symbolized change, hope, and progress. The road that had been damaged for years would finally be fixed, giving them new hope that their lives would improve. They imagined a livelier market, easier transportation for their harvests, and most importantly, the ability to take sick people to the hospital more quickly without the obstacle of muddy roads. Dharma began to realize how significant this project was for the villagers. Many of them greeted him and expressed their gratitude. Some showed their appreciation by inviting him to share a meal, while others offered help in the form of labor. However, despite this support, some still cautiously questioned whether the project would be completed as hoped. Dharma understood that the anxiety still lingered, but he was determined to ensure that the project ran smoothly. He knew that the villagers not only needed a new road but also needed reassurance that this project would bring tangible and lasting benefits. Dharma was not one to sit behind a desk. He frequently visited the construction site to ensure that every aspect of the project was going according to plan. Every morning after breakfast, he would go to the construction site, interact with the contractors, check the quality of the materials, and talk to the workers. He wanted to ensure that the project would not only be completed but also built to high standards. At the site, Dharma met various people. Some workers who initially didn't know him eventually learned who he was and what he was doing. These workers felt valued, as Dharma didn't hesitate to talk to them directly and ask about their well-being. In fact, some who were initially uninterested in the project began to feel proud to be part of the road repair that would bring significant change to their village. However, amid all this, challenges began to emerge. Although the project had the support of many villagers, some people felt the need to hinder its progress due to administrative reasons. They believed that regulations should be strictly followed, even though the project was being carried out with Dharma's personal funds and good intentions. The first issue that arose was related to the permits that had to be obtained before the construction could begin. Even though Dharma had received approval from several village leaders, he still had to go through a complicated administrative process. Much of the village bureaucracy required various documents and permits that needed to be approved by the authorities, even if the project was for the common good. One local official, Firdaus, opposed the road construction on the grounds that the project lacked official approval from the district government. "The road is important, I agree, but we must follow the proper procedures," Firdaus said in a meeting with Dharma. He felt that if the project proceeded without official permits, it could lead to legal issues later on. Dharma felt frustrated, but he remained calm. He knew that in a world full of regulations like this, everything had to be done properly. He understood that, although his intentions were sincere, without the proper permits, the project could come to a halt. However, he hoped that officials like Firdaus could be more flexible, considering the road had been in disrepair for so long and was desperately in need of repair. Dharma, who had long learned how to face challenges and negotiate, decided to follow the proper procedures. He sought help from some villagers who had connections with officials at the district level to expedite the permitting process. However, despite taking this step, Dharma still felt burdened by the administrative weight he had to bear. On the other hand, Dharma also faced the conflict between his idealism to see the project completed quickly and the reality that everything had to be done according to the correct procedures. He sometimes felt that the process was moving too slowly and became frustrated, but he had to remind himself that the road to change was often filled with obstacles. Meanwhile, beyond the administrative issues, some people also tried to obstruct the project for more subtle reasons. Some of Dharma's family members and old friends felt that he was being too ambitious and interfering too much in the affairs of the village. They believed that Dharma should respect the existing order and not impose his ideas on the community. The biggest challenge for Dharma was how to overcome this distrust. Although he tried to provide concrete evidence in the form of documents and statements from trusted contractors, some still doubted his sincerity and viewed the project as a temporary initiative that wouldn't bring about significant change. Dharma, though feeling pressured at times, did not give up. He knew that the road to achieving his goal would not be easy. Every time an obstacle arose, he tried to find a solution. If there were administrative issues, he would address them wisely and follow the procedures. If there were people who doubted his intentions, he would demonstrate through his actions that this project was for the greater good. As time passed, despite the slow pace and the challenges, the villagers began to see the results of Dharma's perseverance. Some sections of the road had already been repaired, and although it was not yet finished, there were tangible changes that could be felt. The villagers began to feel a sense of hope, even though they knew the journey to complete the project was still long. Dharma also strengthened himself with the moral support of some villagers who were beginning to trust him. Every time he visited the project site, he brought renewed energy and tried to inspire the workers and villagers who were present. He knew that this project was not just about the physical road, but about rebuilding the sense of unity and togetherness among the villagers who had long been divided by problems and hardships. Dharma had reached a critical point in his struggle to repair the village road. Although the road construction project had started, the costs were far higher than he had anticipated. With his personal funds nearly depleted, he had to face a harsh reality. To continue the project, he would need to make a great sacrifice. For this, he would have to sell some important assets that had always symbolized his success and future in the city. After several months of the project, Dharma began to realize that the cost of road construction was higher than expected. Material costs, labor wages, and other unforeseen expenses kept rising. Despite his efforts to find ways to save money, such as reducing administrative costs and seeking more efficient contractors, the reality was that expenses continued to balloon. Dharma had already spent most of his savings, which he had accumulated over the years in the city. As a successful Bakso vendor, he had always been wise with his finances, but nothing could prepare him for the unexpected costs that arose from such a large project. Despite the support from many villagers, the project had far surpassed his personal financial capabilities. That evening, Dharma sat alone in his office, staring at the financial reports of the project spread out before him. He knew that if the project stopped now, all his hard work would be in vain. The villagers who had placed so much hope in him would be disappointed. Dharma thought long and hard. Finally, a difficult decision came to him. He would have to sell some of his valuable assets in the city to cover the costs of the project. Dharma owned several assets in the city: a house that he had bought through hard work, a car he often used for business, and some land he had planned to use for his future. All of these were the result of years of labor and his thriving Bakso business. These assets were not just symbols of material success but also represented a future guarantee for his family. However, Dharma felt that the road construction was more important. He realized that this was the right time to give something greater to the community he had long left behind. The damaged road was not just a physical barrier but also a symbol of neglect and stagnation. Dharma felt that if the road were completed, it would create opportunities for the village to move forward, not just in terms of physical access but also access to economic and social opportunities. That night, after much reflection, Dharma decided to sell the house and land he owned in the city. He knew this was a big step that could change his family's life, but he was ready to face it. If this is the path I must choose, then I will walk it, he thought. When Dharma revealed his decision to sell his assets to his family, the reaction was surprising. His wife, Busidi, who had always supported him, suddenly became worried. Why do you have to sell the house? It's the only thing we have. What if we struggle later? Busidi asked, her voice trembling. She knew how hard Dharma had worked to build their life in the city. Their children, now old enough, were also concerned. Dad, why do we have to do this? Can't we find another way? We've been doing well in the city. Why go back to the village? Said their eldest son, Andy, who had just finished high school and was planning to continue his studies in the city. Dharma saw the disappointed expressions on his wife's and children's faces. He knew that this decision would not be easy for them, especially his family. But he also felt that if he did not take this step, the grand dream for the village would be lost. He tried to explain the reasoning behind his decision. I know this is difficult, but if we don't make a sacrifice now, we might lose the chance to give something greater to many people. Not just for us, but for the entire village, Dharma explained, trying to reassure his family. His wife, initially shocked and worried, began to feel uncertain. But this is our home. Everything we have is here. What if it doesn't go according to plan? Busidi said, her eyes beginning to fill with tears. Dharma nodded slowly, feeling the weight of the burden he had to bear. But he knew this was the right step. I understand, Boo, but I believe that money means nothing if we can't help others. This is the time to give something greater. For all of us, Dharma knew this was the right moment to teach his family a value that was more important than money: the value of sacrifice. He tried to convince his family that what they were doing wasn't just for their personal benefit, but for the common good. He wanted to teach them that in life, there are things more valuable than material possessions: helping others and contributing to positive change. Money is just a tool. If we can use money to help others, then that money has a deeper meaning. What's the point of having wealth if we can't use it to benefit others? Dharma said to his wife, who slowly began to accept the reality. Siddhi, who had been deeply worried, finally realized that her husband's decision was based on good intentions and genuine sacrifice. She looked at Dharma with understanding in her eyes. "I know you're doing this for the good. If this is what you believe is right, I will support you," she said softly. Their children, though initially hesitant, eventually understood. They began to see how important it was for a head of the family to make sacrifices for a better future. Andy, their eldest son, who had been confused at first, finally said, "Dad, if this is what you think is best, we will support you. We must give something for others." After his family gave their full support, Dharma took immediate steps to sell the house and land in the city. The process was not easy, and he had to navigate a lot of bureaucracy and other challenges, but he knew this was the step he had to take. When the house and land were finally sold, Dharma felt a sense of relief. He had raised enough funds to cover the remaining costs of the road construction project. Still, he felt a deep sense of loss. The house he had built with his own hands, the land he had bought with hopes for his family's future, were no longer theirs. Yet, he knew that through the sacrifice, he could help many others, and that was what made him feel that everything he had let go of was truly meaningful. With sufficient funds, Dharma was able to continue the road repair project. The workers became more motivated, as did the villagers who could see real progress. The damaged road slowly began to improve, and every step of construction gave them new hope. Dharma felt a sense of fulfillment, knowing that although he had to let go of many things, he was making a significant contribution to his village. He wasn't just building a road. He was instilling the value of sacrifice that could inspire many others. After a long and arduous journey, the village road project that had been Dharma's dream was finally completed to perfection. The road, which once was a muddy, bumpy path filled with large stones and deep holes, was now transformed into a smooth, wide, and passable road for vehicles. For the villagers, this was not just a road. It symbolized a rebirth and a new hope, replacing the struggles they had endured for years. All of Dharma's efforts and sacrifices, although once questioned by many, had now resulted in tangible, real change. The road, which had once been a source of bitter memories and hardship, had now become a symbol of the village's revival. Villagers who once had to carry their harvests on foot or by using limited transportation could now easily transport their goods by trucks or other vehicles. This not only made daily life easier, but also opened up new economic opportunities for the farmers and traders in the village. For Dharma, seeing these changes was a satisfaction in itself. He never dreamed of being immortalized as a hero, but seeing the happy faces of the villagers who were now reaping the benefits of the road filled his heart with relief. Every time he walked along the newly built road, he felt that all the sacrifices he had made had been fully worth it. However, despite being considered a hero by many, Dharma always emphasized that the road was not for him. He saw it as a responsibility that should be carried out by anyone with the ability and opportunity to help. "This is the road for all of us, not just for me," he said on one occasion when villagers wanted to honor him with a statue or some form of recognition. The new road had a profound impact on the daily lives of the villagers. One of the most noticeable effects was the easier access to markets for their harvests. Previously, villagers had to walk long distances or use unreliable vehicles to bring their agricultural products to market. This not only affected their income due to time-consuming travel, but also limited their market reach. Now, with the smooth and wider road, trucks could easily enter and exit the village. Villagers with produce or goods to sell could quickly and efficiently send their items to farther markets. This allowed them to get better prices and expand their distribution networks. Moreover, the new road also improved access to the local hospital, which had been a major issue for the villagers. In the past, if someone became seriously ill or needed medical care, they had to endure a long, risky journey. The muddy, pothole-ridden road often made travel more difficult and time-consuming. Now, the journey to the nearest hospital was much quicker and safer. For the families in the village, this was incredibly valuable, as it could save lives in emergency situations. Dharma often saw the villagers' faces filled with joy the first time they experienced this newfound convenience. They could get their goods to market faster and receive medical assistance more promptly when needed. All of this was thanks to the road that had been built with so much effort and sacrifice. Dharma always reminded himself that this project was not about him. Even though many villagers wanted to commemorate him with a statue or some other form of recognition, he firmly declined. "This is not for me. This is for our village. I am just doing what needed to be done," he humbly said when discussions arose about giving him an award or naming the road after him. For him, the greatest reward was seeing the transformation that had taken place in the village. Seeing villagers smile because they could now transport their harvests more easily, or watching children who once had to walk long distances to school now travel faster, was more than enough for Dharma. He believed that acts of kindness done without expecting anything in return would always have a greater impact, both for oneself and for others. Dharma felt that building the road was not an achievement to be flaunted. Instead, it was a social responsibility that every capable person should bear. To him, if someone could help, then it was their duty to assist others without seeking praise or recognition. Once the road was finished, the most tangible change was the renewed spirit among the villagers. They felt valued and seen, especially after so many years of living with various hardships. It was not only the road that brought change, but also the sense of togetherness and the spirit of cooperation that had been rekindled. The villagers felt a sense of ownership in the transformation. Some of them began starting new businesses, such as small eateries or shops, to serve the local population as well as travelers passing through. Farmers began to plant more crops because they knew they could easily transport their harvests to the market. This sparked a spirit of collaboration among the villagers. They worked together to improve other infrastructures that were still lacking and to strengthen the local economy. The community began to build stronger bonds, with the understanding that unity was the key to developing a more prosperous village. After the road was completed, Dharma felt that his main task was finished. He was satisfied to see how his hard work had brought substantial benefits to many people. Although he continued to reject being memorialized as a hero, he felt that his contribution had made an impact not only in the village but also in his heart. Dharma returned to the city with a peaceful heart. He knew that even though he was returning to his previous life, the road that had been built would always be a part of his life story. There was no recognition or praise more valuable to him than seeing the transformation that had taken place in the village. The villagers would always remember him, not as a hero, but as someone who did what he believed was right, without expecting anything in return. As he left the village, Dharma realized that this project had given him more than just financial success or material recognition. He had given something far more valuable, hope. Hope that with effort and sacrifice, a great change could happen, even in the most remote places. After a long and challenging journey, Dharma finally completed the mission he had started years ago, building a road that would connect the village to the outside world. Although he had to return to the city once everything was finished, the legacy he left behind would continue to be remembered. The road that was once filled with difficulties and bitter memories had now become the Road of Hope, a symbol of significant change for the community that had long been trapped in limitations. While many villagers hoped that Dharma would stay, he felt that his primary task was complete. In his heart, he knew that the road was not just a physical change but an emotional journey for him and the entire village. He returned to the city with a heart full of gratitude and peace. Part of him felt heavy leaving the village after all that he had done, but he knew it was time to move forward and take the next steps in his life. In the city, Dharma's life returned to its usual rhythm. He resumed his routine as a successful Bakso meatball business owner. However, even though city life felt like it did before, there was something different in his heart. He never forgot the village he had left behind, and although the road he built had changed the lives of many, he felt that there was something even more important: the change within himself. He often reflected on the difficult times he had endured, recalling how he had decided to fight for his hometown, despite the doubts many people had about his intentions. The Road of Hope had not only changed the village but had also transformed him into a wiser, more patient, and stronger person than he had been before. For the villagers, the changes they experienced were not only in the physical transformation of their village but also in their outlook on the future. The road that was once full of holes and mud had now become a symbol of revival and change. They decided to name it the Road of Hope in honor of Dharma, who had made this transformation possible. The name was not just a label. It represented what had taken place in their village. In the past, the villagers could only hope in God and fate to solve their problems. but now they knew that they could strive and work to create change. Dharma had shown them that with persistence, sacrifice, and care for others, every problem could be solved. When the name Road of Hope was announced, the entire village gathered to celebrate the occasion. Some of the villagers who had once doubted Dharma's intentions were now deeply moved and extremely grateful. They stood together along the newly constructed road, recalling the difficult times they had gone through and how meaningful this road was to their lives. Dharma, although already back in the city, heard about the naming of the road through a letter sent by an old friend in the village. Though his heart was touched, he humbly responded to the honor. "I only did what was necessary. This road belongs to all of us," he wrote in his reply. For Dharma, the honor was not for him, but for everyone who had joined in the struggle to help build the village. For Dharma, the legacy he left behind was far more than just a road. As someone from the village, he understood well how difficult it was to overcome life's limitations. The road not only provided physical access but also opened doors to new opportunities and dreams that had once seemed unattainable. With the new road, the villagers could access broader markets, transport their harvests more quickly, and enjoy better access to healthcare. However, more than that, they now had new hope for the future. They knew that if Dharma, once a young man who had gone to the city, could achieve success and return to help the village, then they too could follow in his footsteps. Dharma taught them that great changes start with small steps. No dream is too big if someone is willing to fight to achieve it. The villagers now had the confidence to dream bigger and change their own destinies. Over the years, Dharma had faced many challenges. He had fought his way from humble beginnings, from being an odd-job laborer to finally opening a successful Bakso business. However, the struggle to build the road in his village gave him a new perspective on the meaning of sacrifice and responsibility. He realized that personal success would mean nothing if he couldn't help others achieve a better life. The greatest change within Dharma was how he viewed life. Previously, he had focused more on material and personal success. However, after witnessing the profound impact of the road he had built, he understood that life is more than just personal achievements. Life is about giving, doing good for others, and striving for the greater good. The road he built in the village not only improved the villagers' quality of life but also changed his perspective on the very meaning of life itself. After returning to the city, Dharma felt lighter. He was no longer tied to selfish personal ambitions but felt fulfilled because he had created something much bigger than himself. He felt that his life now had a deeper meaning. Every time he looked at the road he had built, he saw not just its physical form but also the memories and the spirit embedded within it. Although Dharma returned to the city and resumed his life as a businessman, his memories of the village and the legacy he left behind would always remain alive. The villagers would never forget his sacrifices and dedication. The Road of Hope would always remain a symbol of courage, hard work, and sacrifice. Each new generation born in the village would hear the story of Dharma and how he changed their lives. The Road of Hope also became a gathering place for the villagers, who would reflect on the difficult times they had endured together. Along the road, they often discussed the future of the village, how they could maintain and improve what Dharma had started. The road was not just a place to walk, but also a place to dream, plan, and remember the struggles they had overcome together. Dharma may have returned to the city, but his legacy remained alive in every corner of the village. He had planted the seeds of hope that would continue to grow and flourish in the hearts of everyone who lived there. The Road of Hope would always serve as a reminder that every struggle, no matter how hard, will always yield beautiful results for many people.